Roy, I'm interested. You come from your nice sort of life in the city in Enfield, and then you're working with Willie Stephenson, a guy most people are probably terrified of, and you're riding these racehorses in all weathers. I mean, it must have been pretty. I'm assuming there was no central heating and stuff, so it must have been pretty flipping freezing a lot of the time.
Oh, well, in the bedrooms they used to have the old Valor heaters, paraffin heaters, and we used to light them to keep us warm over night time. But it was cold, and your feet were the ones that got cold, and you used to stuff newspaper in your Wellingtons if it was wet, just to keep your feet warm. If it was dry, you had your Land Army girl boots on and your jobbers, and that was it. If it was raining, sometimes you'd stick newspaper down your jobbers to stop getting too wet. But
You didn't have any waterproofs or anything like that then?
no, if you could afford one, you might buy a second-hand riding Mac, and they used to have straps inside the Macs. They used to tie around your leg to keep them close to your legs when you were riding. But not many of us had them, unfortunately.
But I mean, you all a group of lads together.
Yeah.
There was no girls there to keep you to distract you. So you had a lot of fun. I mean, you were telling me about some Boy Scouts.
Well, yes, the Boy Scouts. We were riding out. It must have been in the summertime because they were camping in a place we called the Valley. And if you imagine an horse, you're sitting there, and all of a sudden you see about 30 or 40 little dots coming running at you. They were jumping and kicking and whipping round, and we were hanging on for dear life. And when they got closer, they were all laughing at us. That really got our backs up. So we thought we'd get our own back on them. And we went that night, because we had to be in by 10:15. So we come downstairs, opened the dining room window, and went out into near enough the yard. And we split into two groups, went up to where the valley was, which is half a mile away, split into two groups, and one of us had a flash torch, and one neighbour one side and the other was the other side. We flashed up that we were in position, and we went down and let all their guy ropes off. And the fire brigade come over, and we just legged it back and went back to bed.
And that made the local paper.
It did make the local paper, and it had dirty trick played on the Boy Scouts. Now, there used to be an army camp in Royston, there was an RAF base at Bassingbourne, and there was a remand home, Nebworth, I think it was Neesworth or Neesworth. So they couldn't place it to anyone, so we never heard any more about it. But they didn't run up there anymore.
Now go back to the racing. You used to travel with your horses to the races.
Yes, yeah.
And these days, the lads have got like dormitories at the racecourse and stuff like that.
Yes. Well, some of them, even like at Chester, you've got an hotel to stay in.
So what did you guys have?
Well, we used to be. There was sort of like an hostel affair there, and there was always a canteen. But sometimes you went out into local people's bed and breakfast sort of thing. In Ireland, that still goes on. You go sometimes to, if they haven't got enough space for all the lads, you go to bed and breakfast. But I remember going one day to Catterick, and we didn't have proper mattresses, but they were straw-filled mattresses on beds, and that's what we slept on. And there was gas lamps. There wasn't electricity. There was just gas lamps. And the other thing that amazes me, that I still remember, I think the prize money then was about £3,000 for the winner. And it hasn't changed that much now. Not the way, inflation, everything else has gone up. It's still only the worst races are sort of £3,000, if some maybe less than that. So in some ways, there's too much racing for the prize money that is. I don't know how you get it, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, and you were telling me that you at least one occasion you had to sleep next to the horse under a horse blanket.
Yeah, well, it was my old horse Barbering. He went to Wolverhampton. I said he broke the course record there, first time out over hurdles, first time on a race course even. And the other horse that I went with that fell into first in a chase, and the governor said, "Well, he's entered tomorrow, so we'll run him again." And he said, "Will you stay overnight?" Well, I said, and "You do when you run a print, you don't say no, you say yes." So I stayed overnight. He said, "I can't get you in a hostel or bed and breakfast." He said, "But I'll leave all the blankets." Well, Les Tidy, he was a lovely man as well. He said, "I'll leave the basket with you," which they keep all the racing gear in, so he didn't have to bring that up tomorrow. And you can use the blankets for that, with his big Whitney blankets. And I went to sleep in the stable next to the horse. With just blankets over me, horse blankets, and that's the thing you've done.
No, was there like now you have the best turned out? Was that a thing when you were a young lad?
No, I think that came in later on. I can't remember. I never got a best turned out anyway. But we used to have to put our quarter marks in, and one on the neck, one on the shoulder, which was a diamond on the shoulder, and you could put like fingers is a better way to call it, on their side of their rumps, and you could put diamonds on their tops of the rumps as well. So that's what you done, and Les taught me how to plait up, and the only thing I can't do or never been taught to do was plait up with elastic bands. Now you see the youngsters all got elastic bands and they look very neat and tidy. And you'd always tell a French racehorse running in England, because it'll have big plaits, where ours are all quite neat and tidy.
Right, you're not overly impressed with the fact they use templates these days.
Well, no, there's only one trainer I know that I think he don't like them using that. Sir Mark Prescott. He said you use just the brushes. That's what you were taught when he was a lad, I suppose, or when he got into racing. I like Sir Mark because he's what I call old school, and he's a very intelligent man to listen to. If anyone ever gets a chance to go and listen to him talking in the after dinner speech, go, because it's well worth it.
Right now, you're doing it now, aren't you? So it's well worth listening to you.
I don't know.
No, I assume you wanted to be a jockey when you first started.
Oh yes, yeah, definitely wanted
So
to be a jockey.
Why didn't it happen for you?
Basically, I wasn't good enough, I suppose. But the thing was, I was 6 stone 11 when I went into racing, and I think I was about 9 stone when I left. So my weight was against me. But at 14, 15, when you're 6 stone 11, you don't think you'll ever need to get to 9 stone. And a good friend of mine, little Des Cullen, he done 7-7, and even when he retired, he could do 7-7. So he was a very lightweight lad.
Right, now you showed us your tattoo of barbering at the beginning. Now I understand that barbering was the end of your first part of your life in racing. So what happened there?
Well, when you get older, older teenager, you do things that sometimes you regret doing. And I was very friendly with a man in the RAF who was worked in the MT as an instructor, and he said he wanted to get up to Scotland to see his wife and his mum and dad. Any chance of going up with him, because I had a car at the time. And I said, yeah. He said, I'll supply all the fuel, which was very powerful aviation fuel. And mine was a little Morris 8 Series E, lovely little car. Still remember it. Still can smell the leather upholstery in it. And so that's what I did. I went to Scotland, had a great time, got drunk, more whiskey. But anyway, we came home and I walked up the yard on the Monday morning, and I was told I haven't got barbering anymore. So I thought, well, there's nothing here to hold me here now, and I left. But the lads took me out for a farewell drink on the Friday night, and I used to drink a brown ale called a poacher, which was made by Flowers Brewery, and they were sticking vodka in the bottleneck. So I got absolutely, really, really drunk, and I've never touched vodka since. But that was nice of the lads, and I went home, and that was basically my time in racing. Although I did go down to Royston a few times afterwards to ride out, and Willie, he never said anything. He did come up to me. He said, "Roy," he said, "okay, you might have never made a jockey." He said, "but there's loads of other jobs in racing that you can do." And looking back now, sometime I wish I never left. But then, in other ways, I've had a good life and really enjoyed going back into racing later on.
Okay, we'll talk about that in the last part. But so is that yard in Royston still there?
No, the yard in Royston isn't there anymore. It's a small housing estate on it. The barn, the big barn's still there, and is in King Street, and you've got a plaque on it of Willie Stephenson, Derby winner and Arctic and Grand National winner, on this plaque.
Now, Royston isn't far from Newmarket, is it?
No.
So, what do you miss about Newmarket?
Well, I had to box at Newmarket. Willie was a great thing in boxing. He liked the stable lads boxing, and he arranged at the Corn Exchange in Cambridge to box. So I said, "Well, I've been told by doctors I mustn't box." He said, "You're boxing," so I was boxing, and me and Graham Tidy, the head lad's son, we had to box in Cambridge Corn Exchange, which I did win that fight. But then there was another boxing tournament in Newmarket, and I had to fight there as well, and I got a good hiding. But I should never forget young Desi Cullen fighting there, and there was a well-known boxing promoter, and I can't think of his name now, and he said, "I've never seen two lads fight like Des and this other lad. They had no finesse, but they stood in the middle of the ring and slogged it out for 3 rounds, and I want to give them a $5 each for doing that." And that was my initiation in the boxing game.